Hi, I'm Mike from the School of Self-Reliance, and today we're back on the rant subject. Today's rant is pretty simple. Democracy. Why it doesn't work. James Madison said that he couldn't think of a more hideous thing than democracy, something more aberrant to freedom. His words, not mine. He wrote the Constitution, so he probably had a pretty good handle on what kind of government we were supposed to have. He wrote the documents, so I figure, excuse me, his words, Thomas Jefferson's handwriting. But the point is, democracy. Why doesn't it work? Well, it's really simple. You can break democracy down to one thing: mob rule, popular opinion. Democracy is best explained by saying simply this: if there's 10 people in the entire world, and 6 of them say this is how something should be, then the other 4 are forced to live under the edict of the other 6, with no protection whatsoever. So whatever decisions the 6 people make, the other 4 will have to live under it. That doesn't seem fair, does it? But we're all taught democracy is very fair. We all get a vote. Yes, we all get a vote. And, well, anything that's popular or trendy becomes law. Simply, we elect a politician because he's popular, he's trendy, and so he's likable, so we elect him. And then that person or group of people or party then passes laws that are popular or trendy. They won a popularity contest. So, the law gets to win a popularity contest. It's what the most people think should happen. So, 50.1% tell 49.9% of us how to live. And you say, oh, well, that would be true, Mike, if it wasn't for the Constitution, or if it wasn't for this, or it wasn't for that. That's not true. The democratic process that we've followed now, we've so gutted the constitutional republic that we're supposed to have, that it bears little resemblance to what it was designed for or designed to be. No, we're now almost a pure democracy. And in a democracy, one thing that changes with the political wind are laws. Another thing that changes are taxes. There's no set standard. Business doesn't grow correctly because, well, you're always worried about what the new regulations are that will govern your business activities, what the next level of taxation is, whether they'll go up or down or stay the same. You can never tell. A constant uncertainty. That's what democracy is, a constant uncertainty. The one thing that's absolutely certain in a democracy is whatever is popular and trendy today will be law tomorrow. Think about that. Law tomorrow if it's popular and trendy today. If a whole bunch of people have a knee-jerk reaction to something, it very likely within a few months will become a law that we all have to live with. And the Supreme Court no longer truly does its job because, well, they're elected. They're appointed, rather, by the president, who is a member of a party. He doesn't really care about the country. None of them do. Politicians really don't. They appoint a Supreme Court justice who goes along with their party line. So if one section of the population thinks something is popular, that politician will go along with it and pass laws that are popular according to his constituency and or supporters. And then the Supreme Court justices who belong to a certain party will make decisions on what is constitutionally right and wrong based on the prevailing wind of the party that they are affiliated with in the administration that's currently in office. That is usually the way that it works, and it has become more and more so in our democracy that we're not supposed to have. We're supposed to have a constitutional republic with set norms that this is what you can always expect. This is what your rights are. These are the things that will never be violated. They're inherent. You were born with them. The government has no right to them. No right. None. Government's not a human being. It can't have rights. And we have become caught up in the idea that if we all sit around and vote in a popularity contest, that somehow that is fair. Was it fair to the other 49.9% who lost the election? No, it's not fair. There is no system that's 100% fair, but the closest thing that's ever existed, in my humble opinion, is a constitutional republic where there is a rule of law, a set standard, things that basically do not change, and so there is a consistent norm. Get that through your head, a consistent norm. Okay? With a democracy, what do we have every 4 years? What do we have with Congress, with the president, and everything else? We have this constant back and forth over what's popular, what's a hot button issue today, and how it's going to impact our laws, how it's going to impact our taxes, how this, that, and the other thing is going to impact how you live. Popular opinion. So your lives are being decided by a process much the same as how Lindsay Lohan became popular. Because a lot of people like her, she's rich and famous. And because a lot of people are trending towards one thing, we now have a new law. Really? That's a fair system? A bunch of people trend towards something, and before you know it, we have a new set standard. The old standard is no longer existent. We've changed it. We have a new one. Something else for you. Oh, and don't let it be too damn popular, because if only 30 or 40% of the population support it, hell, we'll end up with something that revamps our entire healthcare system. Or our entire form of government. Hell, that happened one time with a constitutional convention. My point is, if it's popular and trendy in a democracy, it will be law soon enough. That's simple. And I want you to ponder this. When we go out nation building around the world, the United Nations and us, the principal bill payer for the United Nations, we go out and we help a new government, say Iraq or Afghanistan. And when they have free elections, democratic elections, never a constitutional republic, always a democracy. I wonder why that is. We'll get back to that in another video. But they have this democratic election. And the UN and us, we came up with a set of international laws about elections. If a country has an election where at least 50% of the country votes, then we call it a valid election. So as long as half the country votes, we consider it valid overseas. If less than 50% of the population votes in that election, we say it was an invalid election. The United Nations says it, and we say it. The United States. And so if half the population does not vote, it is an invalid election, according to international law when we're nation building. Would it interest all of you to know that half of the American public has not voted in more than 50 years? It has been nearly 50 years since half of the population of the United States has turned out to vote. One of the last elections that we had, a mere 27% of the voting population turned out to vote. However, that's a valid election. And we've become so fragmented in this country that half the country does not elect anybody. It's nowhere near 50.1%. It's just 50.1% of those who voted. Most people are so disenfranchised with our voting system and the way that the government works that they simply don't even vote. They have become either disenfranchised or completely apathetic to the voting process. They couldn't care less. That's a large section of society. And a lot of folks out there are saying, well, then, damn it, they get what they deserve because they didn't vote. If you don't vote, you don't have a right to complain. Under some circumstances, I would agree with you. However, although I think everybody should be deeply involved in their political process, our founders knew better. They knew we were way too apathetic and, quite frankly, way too damn lazy to keep track of a national government and our state government and everything else at the same time. They knew it. And the system that they invented kept the government in check through the U.S. Constitution, but it did it through a couple other things too. State senators, or state legislatures, elected federal senators. Okay? Michigan, to get a senator, didn't have a popularity contest where people picked them. No. The state legislature took applications, job applications, for a senator. They, through their wisdom, selected the most qualified person that they could, and then they put them on the state payroll so they would be beholden to the state, not the federal government, and then they sent them to Washington. See, they believed, our founders, that if the state senator went, the federal senator from the state of Michigan or the state of Florida or the state of wherever, went to Washington and drew a federal paycheck, he would be beholden to the federal government. So they wanted to keep him firmly under the control, him or her, under the control of the state legislature. That way, each individual state got a really good say in how everything went. And not everything was decided by a popularity contest. But we don't have that anymore. Look it up, boys and girls, about how that got changed. One of the other things that was a safeguard against our government going off the tracks and giving us laws that we didn't want to live by was our jury system. Our jury system, we have a grand jury, okay, that prosecutors have to go to in order to seek an indictment, in order to prosecute a person. Then we have a regular jury. Those regular juries and grand juries, especially the grand jury, were there as a shield against wrongful prosecution, not to do the will of the government. When a prosecutor says, it's the law, therefore you must convict because he's obviously guilty. In a case of murder, I would wholeheartedly agree. In a case where there is a victim, I would wholeheartedly agree. However, when it is a law that by nature is unconstitutional, a law that is by nature something you would not care to live under yourself, it's provided in our founding documents that you should vote your conscience. And that means you don't allow it. You don't let that person become convicted of that crime. You refuse to convict. Or if you're on a grand jury, you refuse to indict. Well, those were our safeguards to make sure the government didn't get out of hand. But little by little, those have been broken down. And we've got enough sheeple out there who go to a grand jury and simply rubber stamp indictments so the government always gets its way. And our our federal senators are no longer controlled by the state legislature, so they can't help us. Everything has become a democratic process. We are electing everybody by popularity contest, so that by nature disenfranchises large portions of the voting demographic. And many people who were involved in the voting system, who have tried and tried and tried, and have never seen any good, wholesome, or realistic, usable change within the government, simply give up. They simply don't take part anymore. Think about that. A large section of our population simply doesn't take part either through apathy or stupidity or being disenfranchised. Not wanting to. Just giving up, checking out. And so that leaves the rest of us with about 33% and about 33% here voting against each other, trying to change the country, trying to determine how our lives are going to go and what the societal norms are going to be. And instead of getting a nice, stable line of what the norms are going to be, what you have is every 4 years or so, you have this. Up and down, up and down, up and down. And most of the time, all of these things are headed in one direction, and it's not a good one. So when you think about democracy, think it through. We were supposed to elect the congressman and so on by democratic election, having the will of the people represented in Congress, and the wisdom of the state in the Senate. Because these weren't popularity contest winners. These were people who submitted a job application, who went to interviews, who were interviewed by your entire state legislature. They were the wisdom part, the will of the people in the Congress and the wisdom of the Senate. Now, I said we're too lazy, too apathetic to keep an eye on the federal government. You're right. That's what I said, and I told you I'd explain that. With that process, your state representative who lives not 20 minutes from your house, everybody in the country has a state representative for their district who lives not 20 minutes from where you live. You can be at his door in 20 minutes. In our original system, your voice could be heard at the federal level by driving from your house to your state representative's office and talking to him personally, right there in his office within 20 minutes from your house. And if there was enough public outcry, we could do something about what the Senate was doing. Just like that. Or if the state disagreed with what their senator was doing in Washington, he could be recalled. That way, you could mind the government locally, and your local friends and neighbors, people that you know who live 20 minutes away from you, that you do know, that you elected, those would be the people who would determine who was in the Senate. Because let's face it, when a senator runs for election and he talks on the TV or you listen to that, anything, written ads or so on, you don't know that person. You have no idea what they are, who they are, whether they're lying to you. Really, all they are most of the time is an opportunistic charlatan who's trying to take advantage of you. Okay? And to win a popularity contest, for the most part, they will say anything. And you have no clue who they are, how they act, and more importantly, once they get up there, you have no control over them whatsoever. They pay lip service to the state that they represent and nothing more. And you no longer have the control to go to your state representative and do something about it, where he can bring it to the attention of the state legislature, and they no longer have the power to recall and fire that man. They did in our founders' system. That way, you could keep an eye on the local government, and your friends and neighbors that you elect at the state level would keep an eye on the feds for you. People keeping an eye on them that you actually know, that are really your neighbors, the people you do business with and actually know. But we've turned that process that was a check and balance, we've taken that out. Or, we allowed them to take that out and make it into a pure democratic process where it's another stupid popularity contest. And let's face it, when you look at a lot of people around you and their likes and dislikes, why on earth would you want a popularity contest to determine the people who are going to make the laws that you live by? Why in the hell would you want that? How many of you in high school ever saw the popularity contests and the little cliques and everything that developed in high school and ever felt like you got the best shake in that deal? How many of you? Or when you were in college? Seriously, how many of you had more than just your small group of people that you ever got along with, and anytime you had disagreements with others, how many times did that turn out well for you? Because that's all these popularity contests of democracy are. And there's no set standard and no rule of law. What's legal 4 years ago will not be legal 4 years from now. Period. It happens all the time. And our laws are redefined and expanded to the point that we now publish 20,000 pages a year. Jefferson said that the government that governs best governs least. And that government functioning well and as it's supposed to would be functioning as if not to exist, unobserved, as though it didn't even exist, making no noise at all. Well, we've got a government that makes a hell of a lot of noise now, and it really is mob rule. It really is. It's just a bunch of people with a popularity contest, and everything with the government and everything with the rules that you and I are forced to live by blows with the popular wind. Instead of having a set norm and a set standard that allows people to live and prosper in freedom, that would allow businesses to grow, make plans in the future because there is a set norm. We don't have that anymore. thanks to democracy. So all I'm going to say on that subject is, good night, America, wherever the hell you went. I'm Mike with the School of Self-Reliance. Thanks for watching.